Alrighty, what's up guys, Single Player Nacho here. Love it or hate it, Resident Evil 0 is among those top tier RE GameCube titles. You had Resident Evil 1 through 3, Code Veronica, RE1 Remake, OG Resident Evil 4, which is a wild streak of well-received games, and then there's Resident Evil 0, a black sheep among those titles. Don't get me wrong, it was also generally well-received, and I enjoyed 0 for what it's worth. It had some of the best atmosphere, the opera singer boss, and how can you forget a game that literally pits you with zombies behind you and in front of you in the very first scene? That's some scary stuff. There's also no denying that it stands out as the odd one from the bunch, and there's a perfectly reasonable explanation as to why. Resident Evil 0 is actually a Nintendo 64 title. At least it was supposed to be. This is an unprecedented look at an official, extremely early look at what could have been a title lost in time. But why was it scrapped? The biggest deciding factor behind the cancellation of RE0 on the N64 is simple: memory. Take a look at this N64. Does it look a little bit different than usual? That's because it's equipped with the 64DD, a floppy disk attachment which enabled the system with better memory. It sounds like a good idea, but due to low sales, it was pulled from stores. The very inception of a prequel to Resident Evil was to be designed around the 64DD. As soon as that device was no longer in existence, Resident Evil 0 was to be developed with your standard brick-like N64 cartridge. But again, this would make the devs work with less storage. With the amount of areas, co-op system, and enemies, there simply wasn't enough memory on the Nintendo 64 to bring Resident Evil 0 to life, or at least what Capcom had envisioned for the title. And that vision was plagued with ideas that screamed the 90s. For one, this is the original Billy Cohen, who definitely took a page out of Jack Krauser's design. You may be asking yourself, why was Billy's original design so dangerous and evil looking? In the original, Billy was meant to become the final boss in a sort of twist ending kind of way. You'd also be able to kill off one of the two main protagonists in a choice-based ending. Would anyone here actually pick Billy over Rebecca? Let me know in the comments. The original enemy designs were also thought to differ too much from the typical Resident Evil creatures. You had the Dali, an amphibious creature that was set to evolve at different points in the game, Wesker's monster, who would have been included along with Wesker, and a spider enemy that attached itself to zombies, controlling them to do their spider business. All these cool designs never saw the light of day. They were toned down or scrapped entirely. That's when I finally figured what my biggest gripe was with Resident Evil 0, the tone of the game. Capcom's original intention was to simply copy and paste the scrapped N64 version onto the GameCube. When this wasn't feasible from a technical standpoint, they started entirely from scratch. Though many of the story elements remained the same, and that's the issue. Most of these elements, the opera singer, animal enemies, and the lackluster final boss fight, would have been better, or at least not as noticeable, for a Nintendo 64 title. Take a look at Resident Evil 1's remake. It ditched some of the cartoony enemies and added a more serious take on the action and characters. That's why I can't say that I have the same problem with the game. With the more sophisticated engine, you needed to work around it and give the game a more serious tone. Essentially, Resident Evil 0 is like a remake without the original to go off of. Take a look at the stages set in RE0. You have the train, the training facility, and the treatment plant. Though there are some differences, these areas vaguely resemble the areas in the first Resident Evil game, Hell, you can even argue that the training facility is the Spencer Mansion dressed up as the Marcus Mansion. I mean, it hardly looks like a facility. The treatment plant resembles an underground secret lab, much like the final stage in RE1. Both games start in a giant haunted house and end in a lab with too many creative liberties. Both games have an eerily similar layout. And since both games are literally hours apart in terms of the timeline, was Capcom attempting to reuse much of RE1 onto RE0? Resident Evil 3 reused the Raccoon City Police Department from Resident Evil 2, so they have done it before. With all of the development hell that RE0 went through, it's clear why it's a divisive title among fans and even casuals. It's simply confusing, not just in terms of mechanics, but also intense. There is a disconnect between the game's tone, dead silent atmosphere, and the antics of the main boss and goofy 90s storyline. It just doesn't make sense, and still, I love it. Resident Evil 0 is far from a perfect game. It's good and enjoyable, but it begs the question, what if we did get the scrapped N64 version? Could it have been better? Would we have gotten a remake later down the line? Well, thank you so much for checking out this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments down below what you think of the scrapped N64 RE0 version. Is it something you'd like to play, or would you like to see a Resident Evil 0 remake? Let me know in the comments down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more horror lore, lists, and mysteries. Have an awesome rest of your day, and as always, stay single.